On this week's episode of The Sauce, I teach you guys how I make really glowy plasma and a little bit about color theory. What's up, internet land, and welcome to this week's episode of The Sauce. Every week I'm bringing you guys new content, teaching you guys the secret sauce of how I paint miniatures. Most of my content's dedicated to Games Workshop miniatures, and most of that's going to be 40K. If you guys are into 40K like myself, go ahead and check out my 40K podcast called The Whack Crusade. Every week, my gaming buddy Andrew and myself talk about what's going on in the game and how to get better at it. Then we get in some segments with our producer Josh, and it turns into a wild time. You can find our podcast pretty much everywhere the podcasts are found, but I'm going to drop the link to our RSS feed below. On this week's episode, I'm going to teach you guys how I do a glowing plasma effect using an airbrush. If you guys don't have an airbrush, you can follow along using dry brushing techniques to get pretty much a similar effect. Throughout the course of this model, I've been using blues as the reflections for black metallic objects using non-metallic metal painting techniques. All this means is that I've been building up reflections and highlights on the black panels using various shades of blues. When you look at blue on the color wheel, you'll see that there's various different shades starting anywhere from dark blue and working through light blue on its way towards green. In order to have plasma that complements the color of the model, I looked opposite on the color wheel. This is generally a pretty good way to get inspiration and ideas for what colors contrast really well and also what colors complement across your model. Since I'm going for a high contrast yet complementary color theory on this model, I'm deciding to go with red plasma. When you look at the chunk of blue represented on this model already through the various reflections, you'll see that it's a pretty wide range. When you look directly across from that, you'll also see a pretty wide range of red that represents a similar area. The red builds up through oranges and towards yellow. That's going to be the goal of my plasma, is building up from a base dark red all the way to a bright yellow highlight. This is going to make the object look hot and glowing, and it's also going to make a nice color transition that complements the rest of the model. This is just some pretty basic color theory understanding, you guys, but this is the kind of basic stuff that I use all the time when I'm painting models. The big takeaway from this, guys, is don't be afraid to look at a color wheel for inspiration, and know if you're stumped, just look directly across from the color that you're on, and that's going to start to give you some ideas and hopefully push you in the right direction. Now that we understand a little bit about the color theory and why I'm choosing red, let's dig into our color palette. The color palette I'm using for this project today starts with a Citadel Rakelin Flesh Wash. And then we go into Game Air Scarlet Red, Game Air Bloody Red, Game Air Gold Yellow, Game Air Moon Yellow, and Game Air Dead White. So you'll notice I've jumped forward on the progress of this model a little bit as I want this YouTube series to continue to be educational. All I've done to the gun is painted up how I painted the rest of the model. Same color theory, same color palette, same everything. If you guys want to find out more about that, check out my previous videos on Road to Redemptor. So let's dig in. We're going to start by doing a scarlet red base coat around the plasma. We're also going to do it over areas that might also be glowing due to the heat of the plasma. So what this really means is, since we're going for a glowing effect, it's not a perfect fill in the areas. You can overbleed and overshoot a little bit to cause a little bit of fuzziness between the colors. This is going to help contribute to the overall effect of glowing. Once you get a pretty decent base coat with scarlet red, reaching nearly full opacity inside of the plasma coils, it's time to move on. Next, we're going to be using blood red to come in and start to build up that transition. We want the blood red to be more focused on the inside of the coils. A little bit of spillover here is okay. So we're gonna dig in, thin it down, and start shooting that bad boy. Start to fill in the coils to almost full opacity with this blood red, and you'll start to notice already a bit of a color transition around the coil areas. This is already gonna start to look a little bit fuzzy to the naked eye. This fuzziness is a little bit of what you want when you're looking at the model. Once you've reached pretty much full opacity with the blood red inside the coils, time to move on again. Next, we're gonna mix golden yellow into the leftover blood red in the cup. This is going to create a nice orange blend. We're going to focus primarily using this color on the upper half of the coils, as this is where I want most of the heat to be focused. So the color transition is really going to be blended and starting here. We don't have to be necessarily perfect in this step, but we do want to start to slowly narrow our color transitions. So we're really just getting these upper coils to a nice orange color to start the transition. Next, we're coming in with Game Air Moon Yellow. Again, we're going to just narrow it down and continue to make even thinner bands of color, forcing the idea that things are getting hotter and forcing a smaller color transition area. Through these tighter transitions, it's going to make the eye believe the heat is actually coming out of these coils. Next, we're going to increase the overall contrast of the plasma by coming in with Reikland Flesh Shade and doing a pen wash in between the ribs of the coils. This is a great way to override a little bit of the bleeding that happens between the coils from doing airbrush highlights. It's going to force the coils to look hotter than the area right next to them. Again, this is just going to add to the overall effect that this thing is hot and glowing, and that's the goal. We're trying to make a hot glowy boy, everybody. Next, we're going in and we're hitting the top of the ribs using a paintbrush and Game Air Dead White. This is going to help us establish some very bright highlights for the next step. You have to be kind of careful here, as you really don't want the white bleeding onto anything that you just washed or the rest of the model. You really want a small, fine white line to cover the tops of the coils. Next, we're grabbing Moon Yellow and we're going back over the white with the same technique. I don't really want white to be the maximum highlight on this model because I think it'll take away from the shiny spots that I need on the rest of the model. White is the brightest color there is, which means your eye is going to be automatically drawn to it first. If white's the brightest color on my plasma gun, then everybody's going to be looking at the plasma instead of the rest of the model. Because of that, I want a bright color, but not white. So that's why I laid down white in the previous step, so that I quickly reach full opacity using Moon Yellow. I want this to be about as bright as this yellow can be. All right. And that's pretty much it. Here's some pictures of the plasma on the model when it's done. You've seen that I've overshot a little bit of the plasma just through the whole thing, and I've added a little bit of OSL to the model. This kind of helps with the realism as far as making it glow. However, I will tell you, I think I overdid it. Again, I think I'm pushing it too far on this model, and I don't know if I'm really going in the right direction. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. Again, I'm just being brave and trying new stuff. I hope you guys are trying new things and pushing yourself along the way, and hopefully you guys are learning some stuff from this road to Redemptor. It's okay to continue pushing forward with projects that you're not totally sure on. I know when I finished this project, I sent the pictures to my Warhammer 40k group and was pretty disappointed. I was like, I feel like this is the end for this model. I don't know if I really want to push on. The guys were like, you gotta finish it, man, and just prove a point. So here I am, proving a point, pushing forward. Painting can be tough. It's not easy, and if you're really pushing yourself and trying new techniques, you're gonna mess up. You're gonna make mistakes and you're not always gonna be thrilled with the outcome. But if you don't do those things, you're not gonna get better. This road to Redemptor has been a proving point for me as a painter, and hopefully will continue to serve as a platform for me to grow. I don't have a ton of videos left in this road to Redemptor series, and to be honest, I might take a break for an episode or two. I've pushed myself pretty hard on this so far, and I wanna get back to basics and do some simple painting outside of this. Plus, I've got a whole White Scars army that I just started that I've gotta build. So there might be some future content on how I'm gonna quickly paint, build, and get my White Scars army ready to go for some tournaments, hopefully within the next month. So I've got my hands full. So if you guys don't see this Redemptor for a while, that's what's going on. But do know, I will finish this project. I'm gonna finish it. I hope you guys have been following along and are learning stuff, and I hope you guys are being brave and painting hard. We'll see you guys next time on The Sauce Painting.